Ihop was introduced. Ihop was entered the chat, as the young people say.
But Ihop literally hopped over and gave Waffles a hug.
Yeah, it was
a literal hug. Lady was being used to breed fighting dogs, is what we were told. She was chained up. One of the fighting dogs that was chained up got off, and while Lady was basically chained up, ripped her apart. Dwight, who's the most just absolute psycho dog. If you guys have ever watched The Office, Dwight gets his name from Dwight in The Office. Welcome to Diaries of a Dog Rescue episode. I'm not quite sure. We're in July, though, of 2021.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
We are getting ready to move to this property.
Yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But first,
we drove to Montana. Actually, no.
California.
We drove to California first.
Yes.
What was that trip about? I'm trying to remember now.
Well, I hopped at a few items.
We were going regardless.
Okay.
Yeah, we were going to California regardless. I think it was just to check in on
Blade.
Oh,
we were going to check on Blade.
Yes.
So it was Blade who was with a trainer we used to use, John, with Humble Canine, who's kick-ass. So we were going to check on Blade. I don't know if we brought Blade back that trip.
No, we did not.
Not yet.
No, we did not. So it was checking in on Blade, seeing how his progress was doing, because he went through, it was 4 weeks with another trainer and then 6 additional weeks with John.
Yeah, so Blade actually had a foster lined up, which is the reason we pulled him in the first place.
Correct.
The day this foster went to pick him up, the shelter said he lunged and tried to snap at one of them. Once a dog has behavioral issues, that dog has to stay with us personally. So Blade was in the middle of training, so we went to check on him.
Right.
We rescued Morgan.
Yep.
Who was a hospice Rottie.
Yep.
Mama with a massive, probably biggest mass I've seen.
What personally? You?
Singular one.
Yeah.
We brought Howie back.
Okay.
Yep. We brought Howie back, who was the pup that had, that iodine poured on him? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that the right word?
Yep.
So Morgan,
then we grabbed Ihop.
Howie, and then Ihop.
Ihop was introduced. Ihop was entered the chat, as the young people say.
Yeah. So Ihop was actually, somebody had gotten Ihop. I don't know if I could say where. Has it been long enough? Ihop comes from across the border.
Yeah. Ihop was... So the person that reached out, actually, I literally just had a conversation with her 2 nights ago. But she had a family friend who lived in Mexico who had this litter of puppies, and Ihop was born without her front limbs. And so at this point, Ihop was 2 or 3 weeks old, and they're like, well, she can't latch onto her mama to feed because she's not using her front legs. So they're feeding her I think she said whole milk and white bread or something. And I was like, oh my God, no. And they're like, I don't know. She was following me for fitness related stuff. And she was like, I don't know if you'd be interested in helping a dog that's in Mexico. I can get her here. And I said, look, if you can bring her over, we'll take her, but we can't drive to Mexico to pick up this dog. And she's like, okay, I'll figure it out. And she got her family friend to bring Ihop across the border, and literally Ihop fit in Duke's hand. That's how tiny she was. And we were staying at a hotel in Ihop, and we had Ihop, Francis, and Thea in a hotel room with us. And she
squad.
The squad. But Ihop then became almost the official, hey, I'm going to be the road dog with you guys, because she's gone on every trip with us since then. But she drove with us to Montana, where Duke had, his family was living there at the time. We were visiting with them, and we stayed there for about, I think, a week. And
it was more a work related trip. I had to be up there.
Well, yeah, we were doing.
We were looping from California. I had work in Montana. And then it was back home because we were pretty much immediately moving.
Yeah. But we were shooting the marketing material for work. So
it was your work.
It was my work trip.
Your work, not my work.
But we were there working, and then we drove back to Texas, and I think we had a 2-week window to get ready to move, because at this point we already had the property.
Yes.
It was in closing, and we had 30 days, and we're like, yeah, let's just go to California.
Yeah.
Let's just add more stuff to our plate.
Well, we also brought Morgan back.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about Morgan?
Yeah, we could talk about Morgan.
So Morgan, hospice Rottie, we had a hospice foster lined up for her in California. We had our application, phone call, in-person meet and greet, home check, contract, and everything was great. It was too great.
Yeah.
Place was like immaculate, and I'm not going to dive into like every little detail.
Right.
But I'll say this. Our contract gets updated every year.
Sometimes multiple times a year.
And this was a scenario where we had to update our contract.
Right.
And it might have been different had we been in Texas, but being in California, especially LA, learning experience.
Right.
So everything was great with Morgan for the first 24 hours.
Yeah, I think it was like 2 or 3 days in, and it was
we were
on the
getting
third
ready
day
to leave.
Yeah, we were going to leave the next day, I believe. And
And-
then we extended the trip a little bit because of the situation. But it was, I remember it was a Saturday or Friday night.
It was late.
It was late, and the foster was texting me, and we were texting back and forth. And then the conversation just got really odd. It kept on jumping from subject to subject.
It was like you were talking with 3 different people.
Right. And then she got really emotional about Morgan being a hospice case, which is normal, you know. And I told Duke, I was like, you know, maybe she's had a few drinks and now she's getting emotional of the thought that, like, you know, Morgan's not going to be with her for too long. And then the conversation took a sharp right turn and it started getting really scary. And I won't go into details of what she said in the text message, but it was alarming enough where I think it was like 11 p.m. Duke and I hopped in the car and we drove to her house, and we parked in front of her house and we called the cops. And unfortunately, because there's so much happening in Los Angeles, I think it was 4 or 5 hours before the cops actually got there.
It was like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
when they showed up, and there was loud commotion, especially between Steph and this individual.
Yeah.
But the cops basically said, you know, even though our contract read that we reserve the right to reclaim our animals, it didn't specify that we could enter onto their property.
Right.
And I can't speak for every state, but in California, the way they explained it was that dogs are considered property.
Right.
And they are not allowed to enter onto someone's property to reclaim property. They explained it like dogs are basically the equivalent of a car. If somebody steals a car out here, once it's on their property, we actually can't just
You have to go to like
onto their
small
property.
claims court or something.
Yeah. So Los Angeles is a mess. Anyway,
Well, and
they basically gave us advice, which I'm not going to mention, as far as how to handle it
Right.
with their body cams off. And we got Morgan back, which is the important thing.
Right.
And Morgan had a great run with us.
Right.
But yeah, for those of you in rescue, and that contract was written by an attorney. We just had it written by a different attorney the next time.
Yeah.
Because you have to be very specific
With
in
the
everything
wording.
you do. But yeah,
Well, and
that's why Morgan came back with us.
And, you know, there's been situations, not with our rescue personally, but since that situation, we've heard of other rescues where fosters ghost a rescue and stop answering and essentially steal their dog or don't want to give the dog back because they don't, you know, they're not seeing eye to eye on something that the rescue is doing. And what fosters don't understand is that dog legally belongs to the rescue. You are a foster. You know, hopefully the rescues that the people are working with are having you sign contracts, but it's pretty black and white. The rescue is the legal owner of the animal in question, and a foster is, you know, a home where the dog is decompressing in. But yeah, that situation escalated really, really quickly, and you know, thankfully, we were able to get Morgan out of there the next day with the help of her family, who we were able to get in contact with. So after we got Morgan, we're like, okay, we got to get the hell out of here. So we loaded up the car and we had to rearrange a few things. I think we had to like leave luggage behind because we weren't thinking about bringing a large dog back with, because we had 2 large dogs and IHOP. So then we had to, you know, we had a Pity, the Rot Shepherd mix, and now another Rottie in the car.
Yep.
So I think we like left luggage behind.
I think we FedExed it. Yeah.
I think we FedExed our luggage to ourselves because there's just no room in the car, but we figured it out. So we got to Montana. We hung out there for for a week, worked.
Which was actually nice, given Morgan being a hospice case. She got to experience Montana. It was kind of a bucket list item.
Yeah. So then we,
Nice. Morgan was really sweet.
yeah, she was a good dog. But then we drove back to Texas. God, that's one.
We got back to Texas.
I don't know which drive I hate
And
more.
as we're
The drive from Texas to LA or LA to Texas, or the drive from Montana to Texas?
I don't know. I think LA to Texas, because
Well,
by the
it's
time
just
you get back into
flying.
Texas, the last 8 hours is miserable.
Yeah, that's true. At least it's pretty when you're driving through
Right.
Montana and Wyoming and stuff.
Depending on the time you
Colorado.
get. But we get back home,
Yep.
and it's basically the
Go
week
time.
we move. And the week we move, we then go ahead and rescue. So we have Dwight. Mm-hmm. We have
I remember.
Henry.
And Leonard.
Leonard. Did we get Ladybug? Ladybug. Yeah.
Wow.
Ladybug.
What the hell were we thinking?
I know. So Lady, one of my all-time favorite dogs still. I was actually just talking to her dad like 2 days ago. But Lady, the property she was at was being investigated for dog fighting. Lady was being used to breed fighting dogs, is what we were told. She was chained up. One of the fighting dogs that was chained up got off. And while Lady was basically chained up, ripped her apart.
Yeah.
They also ripped through her leg. I'm not sure how much of that we can show on here. The silver lining, if you even want to use that word, is that in ripping through her leg, it got her off the chain. So Lady was able to basically drag herself off the property. This animal control officer picked her up. And they realized really quick she was not going to survive in a shelter.
Yeah.
With where they were at. So I can't even remember how they got in contact with us. But
she was actually came across an email from San Antonio. So San Antonio sent out a plea.
Okay, yeah.
And when we saw that plea, I was like, that arm looks awful.
Oh, it's because she was hanging out in the animal control office.
Yeah.
Because if they put her in the shelter, yes.
Yeah.
That's right. They were just going to youth her.
Yeah. So I guess animal control officer got a hold of us, and literally, I think it was that same day, we're like, all right, let's go.
I know. And I wish I could remember this guy's name because he was kick-ass.
Yeah, he was.
But really nice guy, animal control officer, who was just trying to do right by Lady. And he actually drove and met us in Waco.
Yep.
Which is where we picked up Lady. So we had Lady, Dwight.
Yep.
Who's the most just absolute psycho dog. If you guys have ever watched The Office, Dwight gets his name from Dwight in The Office.
Yeah.
Yep. And then Leonard. And Leonard, what was going on with Leonard?
So Leonard was from the Fort Worth Animal Shelter, and he was picked up by animal control as well, just roaming the streets. And he had his ear missing. His whole ear was ripped off, and like the side of his head was completely just exposed. So we got him into our vet that same day, I think, when we picked him up. Jess brought him to us because she was living in Fort Worth, and we met her at the vet, and we took that bandage off, and we were just stunned at what we looked at. When we took him to the vet, and they were like, all right, well, you don't have to wrap this anymore. We want to let it air out and breathe out. And I was like, oh my God, like his whole side of his ear was just exposed. Like, oh,
it was rotted flesh.
Yeah. They're like, oh, you just have to hydrotherapy and add cream to it every day. And I was like, so we're just going to leave this out in the open like this? Like,
yeah.
So we would do the hydrotherapy in the bathtub every single day and put him in there. But he was such a good boy. Like
Leonard was awesome.
Man, he never like flinched, fought us, nothing. He just, okay, well, it's time to clean my ear again.
Sweet pity.
Yeah.
Ended up getting adopted, had a great family. He actually passed away a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that was rough. We got to see him right before he passed.
Yeah. But he had a good run. He had a good family. Pretty much the family we envisioned for him. Like he was a dude's dog. Like he was at a house with two dudes, and he had a nice couch, and Leonard had a good run. But we go crazy. And Linda.
No, Linda was before that.
Did we touch on Linda already? No, I think we skipped over Linda. How did we do that?
Oh no.
Damn.
It's all right. We can do a whole episode on Linda.
Linda deserves her whole episode.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah. But Linda, obviously, we personally adopted.
Yeah.
I guess just real quick.
He can't help himself.
I love Linda. Okay,
we're going to go down a rabbit hole. We know this because he loves Linda. So that'll be the whole episode.
Okay. Linda gets her whole own episode.
There you go.
But moving day. It is officially moving day here at the Pawerful Rescue headquarters. Moving day was an absolute
disaster.
Flippin' disaster. Oh my Lord. So how many dogs did we have? At the time?
I think we had 14.
So 14 dogs. We actually had a local company help us out because they had a like doggy washing van.
Yes. So the situation with that was very kind of them to offer to help us, right? I don't think they realized that we had a lot of large dogs.
No, definitely not.
And so they pull up the grooming truck, and literally, I think we fit 2 crates in there. Mm-hmm. It was like IHOP.
Yep.
And I can't remember.
I think we had 3, but yeah.
Okay, maybe we had 3.
It was not enough room.
No, and we're like, crap. Now we have to do multiple trips, and it's an hour both ways.
Yeah. I can't remember if Dustin and Alicia helped us out. Yeah.
Yeah.
They did
too. They helped.
All hands on deck.
Cheryl from Pit Crew.
Yep.
Because she was down the street.
Yeah. Well, mind you, we're moving our stuff along with 14 dogs.
Yeah.
So I think we made a few trips that day back and forth. And then the property, obviously when we got here, it was just 5 acres of open field. There was no backyard.
It was just bare.
There was bare. Nothing. So, I mean, we're getting moved in. Literally, like, I think we were just up for 48 hours. Furniture's not put away. We had like a mattress down. But, it's 3 a.m. and we're out in the field with headlamps, walking
dogs.
14 dogs, trying to make sure everyone goes to the bathroom and everyone's getting some kind of exercise that day.
Well, guys, and mind you,
medical dogs.
This is July.
Yeah.
In Texas. It was like at least 90 something degrees.
Yeah.
And we're walking back and forth multiple times a day, making sure everyone went potty. And, after the fact, after 2 or 3 months of being settled, our neighbors had a little, neighborhood get together. Yeah. Party for us. And people were like, oh, okay. Now we understand what you guys were doing. We just thought you guys were unwell.
Yeah. Well, can you imagine looking out and your new neighbors
with headlamps?
Just headlamps at 3 a.m.
with like different dogs every single time.
Yeah. Well, especially out here because there's a bunch of dogs off leash. They're probably like, hey, why are these dogs on leash walking?
Like, oh, these city dogs.
Yeah. And be like, how long could you possibly walk your dogs for?
Well, and also I think still to this day, there's only a handful of people. I think the people that were at that get together know that we're a rescue.
Yeah. I'm sure most people think we're trainers or breeders.
Yeah. Well, anytime that I have a dog out when I'm on our walk and someone from down the other side of the road is driving, they're like, oh, is this the baby you're training today? And I'm like, yep.
Yeah, just
yep,
sure.
We're trainers. Don't leave your dog here, please. Don't tell people, because that's what it is. It's, I'm constantly seeing poor Yaki Rescue in South Texas because, they have a huge sign out in front, Yaki Rescue, Animal Rescue, and people literally leave dogs tied to their fence or puppies in boxes.
No, rescue.
No.
But it was probably a month of that before we started to get the fence up, you think? Because we had to save up. So, I mean, obviously,
I think
we had 2 properties we had sold. Bought this one. And then it was just saving up money and a personal loan. I can't remember if we needed the personal loan on the fence or if that wasn't until the turf and the concrete.
Yeah, that wasn't until the turf.
If you guys don't know, the build out for the property is all our own personal money. We don't take a salary from the rescue. So, I mean, we just, we're not just filthy where we could drop everything and have it ready to go. So it was a progression of like a couple months there. I think the turf and concrete footing didn't get done until December.
Yeah, I think it was November,
December. Yeah. And that was the personal loan. Yeah. But obviously there's a reason for it. It's because, we were just walking dogs in the field at 3 a.m. looking like psychopaths and extremely burnt out.
I remember when that fence went up and I was like, so is it safe now? We could put dogs in the yard. I think that first month, granted, we were door dashing a lot when we lived in McKinney because we were lazy.
Yeah, like every day.
Yeah. But when we got to this property, there is no DoorDash. There is no Uber Eats, right? You can't, if you don't have food in the house, you're going to starve or you're going to drive 30 minutes to like a Walmart.
Yep.
That first month of not eating out and walking a ton of dogs, I lost 11 pounds. Well, granted, it was also hot as hell outside.
Yeah.
Where I was like, wow, like I am really lean. Yeah. And now my body's just.
Take the DoorDash away.
Yeah. Well, my body now, I feel like it's like used to this life.
Well, yeah.
Like I've been at the same.
Like we do walks, but it's not, 12 hours a day of walking dogs at field. It was literally all day.
I was probably doing like 100,000.
Our entire life was walking dogs in the field.
Yeah, it was pretty awful.
Yeah. So having the yards is nice. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we start to get settled a little bit. At one point, we went and got Tractor Supply kennels. So at least, we could have some dogs out. So we set up the like 10 by 10 Tractor Supply kennels. Like they looked like runs. We had like 3 just in the front of the field.
Oh, this is before the fencing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh my God, I remember that.
We would just have dogs hanging out in there as we're walking dogs, and then we would walk, a dog into the kennel.
Oh God, that was so
or into the what do you call it, tractor supply kennel, into the house, into the field. Like we looked like absolute psychopaths. We had 3 giant just tractor supply kennels hanging out in the yard with random dogs.
Well, it was like, it wasn't even in like the back of the house. It was in the front of the house. Yeah. It was the front of the house with like, I was dreading every time like Amazon would come.
I know.
Or like just anyone would, I don't know, drive down the street. It was like,
it looked terrible.
4 10x10 kennels in the front of the house where we're like,
well, some of the dogs too, like you got Leonard with his ear gone. It didn't look good.
We're like, people think we're a dog fighting facility or something.
It was brutal. Well, and Linda was in really rough shape. Dwight was in really rough shape still.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rough crew outside.
Yeah.
And then let's see here. I mean, outside of, I would say getting settled, but it's not like we really have furniture in this house anyway. Like this is pretty much the extent of our furniture. These are our only 2 chairs and they just stay in here. Yeah. This
is like a fake backdrop.
This was bought specifically for this podcast. I hope you guys are appreciative of it. This is it. But yeah, so when we have IHOP, I know we get the call about Waffles.
We do. That was in August.
At that point. So Waffles, we immediately got her to, it was actually MedVet Emergency Hospital.
Yep.
So she had been stepped on as a puppy. Not sure if it was the kids in the house or the mom.
Yeah.
But her spine was fractured. So we get Waffles to the emergency hospital and they immediately say we need to put her down.
I remember they brought her out on the stretcher and the neurologist was like, yeah, it's just an acute fracture, just the way I don't think she's ever going to be using her front limbs and her quality of life. I think it's safe to cross her over now.
Yeah. And I'll say this, no. Yeah, 0 chance. But it's tough because I think vets in that position get so used to people bailing.
Yeah.
That's kind of just their default. You know what I mean? I think they've probably tried to tell owners before that it's doable. And you have that fine line of a vet crossing the line where they're making owners feel bad. Like it is kind of tricky.
Right.
I didn't love that was just their go-to though. And I think with special needs dogs, large breed special need dogs, there's really not a whole lot of people advocating for them. It seems like we've run into a lot of vets over the years with Waffles that are very much like skeptical of quality of life, which is a little frustrating.
Right.
But we get Waffles home and we're basically like, look, let's just take it day by day.
Yeah.
Let's see what her quality of life looks like. Let's see what we can do. At this point, we had no expectation that, what are we going on 3 years now with Waffles?
Yeah.
We had no expectation of that long, but it was pretty much let's take it day by day and let's see what happens. And at the time, the only room we had open was the guest bedroom over on the left where we have Logan and them now. So that was IHOP. IHOP was hanging out in there and we put Waffles down. And the idea that IHOP, little 2-legged terrier, and a paralyzed Great Dane would become best friends was laughable.
And just to backtrack a little bit, because we talked about Millie the last one of the last videos, I think.
Millie was before Waffles, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But we did kind of talk about Millie, I think at one point.
Yeah, we did.
But basically IHOP was getting her butt kicked by Millie,
we did cover Millie.
This little lab pity mix. And so to think that IHOP would become besties with a dog that was 4 times the size of Millie at that point, because even though Waffles was just 10 weeks old or something, she was already, she was still a Great Dane puppy. She was paraplegic at that point. She wasn't using her front legs, but she was still a Great Dane.
And it's funny, I just came across actually a few days ago the first videos of IHOP and Waffles, but we put them down, or put Waffles down, and IHOP stood up, and Waffles kind of like started to flail her legs. And it was the first time Waffles had like given any indication of excitement or wanting to move.
Right.
And I was like, that's weird.
Yeah.
So we opened the playpen up, put IHOP down and supervised.
Yeah.
And let him play. But IHOP literally like hopped over and like gave Waffles a hug.
Yeah, it was
like a literal hug. And then Waffles, she did stomp her good one time with her like Waffle stomp is what we call it. But IHOP was all about it.
Yeah.
I mean, they hit it off immediately.
So they've been roommates since.
Yeah, well, that's the reason we never adopted out IHOP.
Yeah.
Is because IHOP and Waffles are so bonded, and Waffles is not a dog we could adopt out.
No.
Nobody's going to adopt a special needs Great Dane.
Yeah.
Even if we wanted to physically,
yeah,
like we'd have to physically vet adopters, like have them come over and run through a fitness course. It's a lot to handle a paralyzed Great Dane.
Yeah.
You got to lift her up multiple times a day. You got to put her in a wheelchair. It's a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Waffles was so attached to IHOP that we kind of used IHOP.
We did.
Because that was the only way that Waffles started to use her wheelchair.
Yeah, because we tried without IHOP.
Yep.
And Waffles had zero interest.
Oh, man. She would just become like completely frozen and did not want to even try to move her arms. And the minute we'd bring IHOP out and put IHOP in front of her, she's like, okay, I'm going to go chase my friend. And so poor IHOP, we're like, all right, come on.
Loved it.
Yeah.
We were going to the front of the house multiple times a day.
Yeah.
And we'd have IHOP out and IHOP would run up. Like
boop her
10 yards, and then she'd run back to Waffles, boop her like, hey, come on. And then she'd run back and Waffles started to slowly follow.
Yeah.
And that was awesome.
And now Waffles is like running IHOP over. So we have to be very careful.
Yeah.
IHOP is very shifty though. So she gets the hell out of the way most of the time.
Yeah. No, but IHOP and Waffles are kick-ass. That's the best story ever. Super unique friendship those two have, but I don't know. I love those two to death.
Yeah.
So
then we take it day by day with Waffles because she has been diagnosed with kidney dysplasia.
Yeah.
So her kidneys are misshapen and not really working properly. And once you get a diagnosis like that, you can have 1 year, 2 years, a few months.
Well, and that, and also it's constant UTIs.
Yeah.
She doesn't have control of her bladder. So you have some issues with becoming resistant to different antibiotics. But again, we were told to put Waffles down day one.
Right.
So the fact we're going on 3 years here is awesome. And, every day is a blessing for sure with Waffles.
So with IHOP and Waffles, I think that was our first real experience with dogs that require a little more attention.
Special needs pups.
Some special needs babies.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a different relationship that you form with them. So, I mean, if there were multiple Dukes and Steph, I'd love to have a lot more special needs dogs in the rescue. But unfortunately, they do require a lot of one-on-one attention. So we can't.
The hard part is adopting them out. It's the same as behavioral dogs.
Yeah.
Like I love behavioral dogs. I love rehabilitating behavioral dogs. But then to find an adopter, it's like a 2-year process.
Right.
I mean, we have Sandy, Miley, and Miley's probably a dog that's with us forever too.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to then find homes for special needs dogs or behavioral dogs. So we're kind of handicapped as far as, how many we can continue to rescue because they end up being permanent residents.
Right.
Which is great. But if we have a house full of permanent residents, we can't rescue dogs anymore.
Right. So it's kind of one of those catch-22s. Like we love rescuing them, but then our hands are kind of tied with how many we can take on at once. And what people don't understand is every time we rescue a new dog, it takes, I always use this like, it takes 1 minute away from everyone else in the house. Yeah. And if we rescue another dog, then it takes 5 minutes away from every individual dog in the house. And when you have specials, they require a lot of one-on-one because you have to express their bladder. You need to put them in their chair. And if it's just one, like if we just had one special needs dog, in our house, like that was our only dog in the house, cakewalk.
Yeah, it's not as hard as people think. No. Granted, a large breed, like a Great Dane's very rare situation, but like Miley, cakewalk. Sandy, cakewalk. Yeah. So those dogs are easy. Special needs dogs are awesome. And IHOP and Waffles like the official, unofficial face of the rescue, which is hilarious because Waffles is extremely dog reactive and IHOP's borderline human reactive.
Well, IHOP is just like, she's I don't want to say a typical little dog. Well, she'll like bark at everyone.
Well, she's a terrier.
Yeah. And then you sit down and give her a treat and she's like, okay.
Yeah.
She might excited pee on you, but she's a good girl.
Yeah.
Waffles, the dog reactivity is kind of hilarious.
It did pick up because again, we didn't fix Waffles, obviously.
Yeah.
Given her medical, but it did get worse.
Oh yeah. After her first heat.
Yeah. Cause she used to actually get along with dogs. We had her out with Sadie at one point. But yeah, I mean, the aggression came through for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fix your dogs.
So Waffles basically has IHOP and IHOP has Waffles. IHOP does get along with a few other pups. But she's tethered to Waffles because Waffles does not. But yeah, IHOP and Waffles.
And then at the end of that month, because I remember it was also August being my birthday month, we celebrated Morgan's birthday.
We did. That was kind of our first. No, we had Grandpa Sal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Morgan had her princess birthday party.
Yeah.
Which is very cute. Dustin actually shot that one too.
Yeah. Typically for seniors, hospice cases, we have like a ongoing bucket list of things, and we want them to feel special and experience things. And one of the things that we do are birthday parties, and we like to make them themed because why not? So for Morgan, we did a princess. It was like princess unicorn.
Yeah, it was
pink everywhere. But we also included Ihop and Waffles in that.
Yeah,
we also gave them little treats too. But Morgan had her little. I think we had a tutu on Morgan at one point. But we threw her a little birthday party, and that was her way of ending her revenge tour because we knew her days were coming to an end. She was not feeling well. The mass ruptured. There was, well, not ruptured. I wouldn't say that word. There was a part of the mass that had slightly opened up and was leaking, and she was trying to get
like
through
she couldn't lay down anymore
comfortably.
And that's just gauging quality of life. When we take in like hospice cases for medical, you're basically starting, once you get them on the right medication and let them decompress, it's like, okay, clock starts now.
Right.
This is where their quality of life is at. We're not letting it get below this line.
Right.
And we've done videos on how we assess quality of life, but she basically was right on that line.
Yeah.
And we always tell people, in our opinion, it's better to end on a good day than a bad day.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a day too early and it's a good day, as opposed to being a day too late on a bad day, I'm taking the good day.
Yeah.
These dogs have been through enough. We don't want them to have, multiple days of suffering prior to deciding to
okay, it's time.
Let them go. Yeah. And it's hard because you always, I think, as a foster or rescue, whatever you want to call it, when you have a dog, there's a part of you that wants them to keep going.
I mean,
you want them to hang on.
I think that's every dog parent, You said like rescue or foster. That's like everyone. Like, your dog's getting older or not feeling well or having more bad days than good days.
Your personal dog, it's a little easier to assess those when I'm at. When you're a foster or rescue, again, you don't know what their life was like prior to medical or being a senior. So you have limited data, I guess, as far as gauging their quality of life.
I think, yes.
You're basically gauging what you see immediately in front of you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And some dogs are different. Like with shepherds, we've talked about when their hips go, their quality of life plummets. Like they're proud dogs. They don't want to be around anymore when they can't walk. You have some dogs that are like, oh, a sling? Cool.
Yeah, carry me
let's go for a few more months. Yeah. So it can vary a little bit, from dog to dog. I think when you have a dog as your personal dog for years, from the time they're young to old, it's easier to watch that progression.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, that was their favorite thing 2 years ago and they can't do it. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it matters.
And I also think it's harder for people to make that decision when it's their personal dog.
Well, and they don't go through it as much.
That's true too.
Yeah. But yeah, Morgan had a good run with us. I'm glad we ended up getting her to us.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the official end of any kind of out-of-state fosters, full-blown Texas, because we had our property now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that situation in California with Morgan's foster, we didn't do anything in California, any new dogs, nothing. Really after that, we haven't taken on. That was it was such a bad experience.
Well, because what if it had happened the day after we left?
Right. That was the biggest thing is like, all right, who do we put in that situation to go get our dog?
Yeah,
because technically we would be putting a human's life in danger.
Well, we had Lindsay and Naya who would go do it, but we're not going to do that.
Yeah, we wouldn't put anyone else in that situation because it was such a hostile situation that we were entering, that we couldn't ask someone else to do that for us. And so that's one of the reasons that we stopped pulling dogs and doing things in California was because A, we weren't physically there. And B, what if this would have happened when we weren't in California? Who would we have called and put them in a situation where they could possibly get hurt by this person? Yeah. So, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And we learned from it and we updated our contracts because of it. And we were able to share that story with some rescues to let them know, hey, maybe put this in your contract because this is what happened to us. So it was a learning experience and it was awful. And I never want that to happen again. It's unfortunate that it happened, but it did. And we're better now because of it.
Yeah. Our contracts, 3-4 years later these days, basically read, we can enter on your property at any time for any reason to take our dog back. We reserve the right to pictures and like reserve the right to pictures.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a constant update. But no, I mean, that was pretty much us getting to the prop.
And guys, we only do this because we care. Okay. If we were rescues that didn't care, we would give a dog to whoever don't have people sign contracts and forget about them. But we genuinely care about our dogs and where they end up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're a little crazy.
We do warn adopters, you're stuck with us for life. Yeah.
Not even the duration of the dog's life, for life.
But no, that was pretty much getting settled there. Oh, I guess positive note for Millie, because everyone always asks about Millie.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess if you weren't with us at the time, you don't know, but Millie and Lady, of all dogs, became best friends.
Yeah.
And Lady, being from a dog fighting, I don't know what you want to call it, property ring.
Yeah.
Lady was a little snippy with dogs, so we were having a hard time finding her a friend. I think being a mama, though.
But she was a mama dog.
She was a mama, and
Loved
Millie, she was obsessed with. I remember she walked past Millie, and it was the only dog she didn't lose it on.
Yeah.
And it was every day.
Yeah.
And we kind of moved Millie into a playpen, and Lady was like full-blown good body language running up. And we're like, fuck, like, okay, let's try it.
Yeah.
And they hit it off, and they were best buds until Millie got adopted.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was nice to have a friend for Lady and see her be full-blown mama, like how gentle and sweet she was.
She was so cute with her.
Yeah. Lady was a good one.
That's a good note to end it on. A nice happy note.
Yeah.
I know we're taking you guys along the whole journey. So at this point, we're a month and a half into our property, getting kind of settled in. And here we are with only 14 dogs, about to go full-blown rescue crazy. So stay tuned for the next episode.
Yes, because then
Duke and Steph unhinged.
Like sweet boy Chase came around.
Shut your mouth. He was
Chase
amazing.
is the reason we took out that loan.
Chase is the reason we took. So stay tuned for why we took out a loan for a Weimaraner named Chase.
That's why. Later, guys.
Wait, like, subscribe, all the things.
Sorry. Don't forget, like, share, comment, subscribe, and
ring the bell. Thank you guys. Bye.